When I saw on the internet that Bob Dole had gone to the Capitol Rotunda, and I watched every second of it, he's an extremely frail man, another war hero, crippled in a battle in Italy. Was in the hospital for 2 years, had multiple operations, and look, he became a congressman, a senator, the majority leader, ran for president. Two war heroes, Bob Dole and George Bush. And he's wheelchair-bound, quite obvious, and his assistant, who was quite proficient, helped him out of his chair, his wheelchair, and held him up. Bob Dole was paralyzed, and I believe it was his right arm, and his left arm, he lifted it, saluted as best he could. A sharp salute with George Bush. I have to tell you, my eyes welled up. This is a passing generation. And people who are very young today, or the next generation yet born, they're not going to see this generation. It's a very, very special generation. No discussion about LGB, this, that, or the other. No discussion about who uses what restrooms. No discussion about safe spaces or being triggered or any of the rest of it. These were real men and real women. I just hope we can get some of that back. I really do. I know there are men and women in this country who have the same grit, who volunteer in the military, who volunteer to be cops, who volunteer to be firefighters, emergency personnel, you name it. They're of the same ilk. But more and more, there's fewer and fewer. And that's what concerns me. But that was quite a scene there, I tell you. It was, and George H.W. Bush, magnanimous man, he made sure that President Trump and the First Lady would be invited to his wedding. Invited to his funeral. That was not the case, of course, with John McCain. And the word also went out, he did not want his funeral politicized. He did not want politics involved in his funeral. And everybody knew what he meant. Paul Wellstone, the McCain week-long events, he didn't want it to turn into a circus. Let's hope John Meacham holds to that. I know the Bush family will. There's something about this Bush family. Obviously, I don't always agree with them and their politics and so forth, but there's something about the family where they have enormous dignity. Again, I was a Reagan guy. And I had serious differences with this president on domestic policy, with his son on domestic policy. But character, dignity, they have character and they have dignity. Jeb Bush, too. Character and dignity. There's no taking that away from this family. Now, some of their aides didn't have either, that's for sure. But they did and they do. You know, I've met several presidents over the years. Obviously, Reagan. Before that, I actually met Gerald Ford. Interned at the White House that summer as part of a program with Fund for American Studies through Georgetown. 1976, bicentennial. George H.W. Bush and George Bush. And near the end of his presidency on one occasion, I think it was a week or two before he left office, he invited a handful of us who were on radio. Nicest guy. Nicest guy. George W. Bush. Same with George H.W. Bush. Really nice people. Reagan. Really nice. Just nice people. And of course, I've met President Trump, and I'm going to tell you, really nice guy too. And they're all very charismatic, and they're all different. And they're all different. And President Trump, I've met him how many times now? 2, 3, 4 times. He's a very charismatic man. I know they try to rip him to shreds. I know they try and poke him in the eye and get a reaction out of him. I know people caricature him. He's a good man. Like the others. They're all good men. And the media will continue to try and use the men that most of us have voted for, one against the other, and all against us. Don't go for it. Don't buy it. Don't go for it. Don't buy it. For the most part, the only Republicans the media like are the ones that can no longer speak. Or, if they do speak, they speak in ways that undermine their own party, certainly the conservative movement. You're on to them, we're on to them, and we know. All right, I promise when we get back, I want to dig into this. President of the United States will not be charged with anything. There's nothing to charge him with. Plus, he can't be. I'll be right back. All right, let's take some calls. I think I've gone on a long time here. A lot on the table. I hope most of it's useful to you. Maybe not. Let us go to, this interests me. Kathy, Topeka, Kansas, the great K-A-R-N. How are you?
Hi there. Yeah, it's K-M-A-J, but that's okay.
K-M-A-J. All right, Mr. Call Screen, you need to ask them where they're calling from. Go right ahead.
Did. I think all I was going to say was you were right that Senator Dole is a fine man. My parents, who one is gone now, but they used to go out with the senator and his wife, his first wife, quite often. Way back, I'm 65, and I was a kid, and we just called him the Candy Man because he always had something nice for us whenever he'd come over. And he was just the nice. I never even.
Now, wait a minute. He was friends with your parents, or he?
Yeah. Dad was a dentist here in town, and he was a senator. I think a state senator for a while.
No, he was a congressman.
Okay. I didn't pay attention to that stuff. He was just really nice, and I didn't even notice his arm was messed up until later on, because he was just a guy, and he was a really nice guy, and he took the time with me and my sister, and that probably was a challenge all in itself. But he was a normal. Nice.
He still is. He's still with us.
I know.
Yeah.
But he hasn't been in Topeka for many years.
He really, I'm sure he can't fly. I'm sure he can't travel. He looks extremely fragile.
He looks
95.
Yeah. And like I said, my mom just turned 90. So, yeah. It's just, I just wanted you to know that I doubt he's changed that much. He was just an all-around good man.
Well, what I saw there did really bring tears to my eyes. I mean, and goosebumps, because it was not easy for him to get over to the rotunda. I know he has a place in Washington, D.C. It was not easy. You could see he has to be dressed and groomed. It's just not easy. And to get over there and to have his aide lift him up so he could stand and then try to salute with his left hand, which he did with 2 or 3 fingers. You know, George Bush and Bob Dole, they go back a long way together. And at times they were rivals, and of course most of the time they were very, very good friends. So it's kind of sad for, I want to thank you for your call. It's kind of sad for many of us. Somebody like me, 61, I would get involved in politics when I was in my teens. I remember all these people. I remember campaigning for Reagan. I remember campaigning for Reagan Bush. I remember 1976 and 1980 going door to door and duking it out with the rhinos. I remember my mother and father helping me, doing the same thing. They were so supportive and energetic about it. You remember all these things. And then as you get older, you see people pass away and events pass you by, and then you realize, well, soon we'll be that generation, and we'll be looking back. Makes you think about a lot of things. Life and death, what you do with your life, what might be or not be after life, your children and your grandchildren, how you'll be remembered, if you'll be remembered. You think about all those things. And then you move on.